Can you hear now, Lucy? Let's see.
Yeah, I can hear.
Hopefully you can hear now. I have my earbuds in. It's always something with Zoom. It's always hard to get everything figured out. Okay, good. All right, I think we're good to go. Okay, so 6.1, we'll talk more about chromosomes, what they are, and then how cells change over time. We talked about mitosis and how cells have more of their own kind, but cells can also make different kinds of cells. And we'll talk about how eggs and sperm cells are created. And that's through a different process called meiosis, which is similar to mitosis with a few changes. So gametes are cells that have half the number of chromosomes that body cells have. Gametes are names for egg and sperm cells. And that's what you're seeing in this picture right here. The large ball, that's an egg cell. And then sperm cells are surrounding the egg cell. So the sperm cells are much smaller than the eggs. They have tails on them. And so you can see right here, like this would be one sperm cell right here. And so they have tails to swim. The egg cells stay in place. And so those are what gametes are. And so they each have half the number of chromosomes. When they combine, they make one cell, the new cell of a new organism with a complete set of chromosomes. And that's how you get half from your mom, half from your dad. So half your cells come from your dad, with a sperm cell having half the chromosomes, half come from the egg cell, which combine to make a complete set of chromosomes in the body cell. So you have two kinds of cells in your body. You have what are called body cells and you have germ cells. Body cells are your normal cells that make up your bones, muscles, skin, everything in your body. Somatic cells is another name for body cells. So you might see the book, it says somatic cells, but that's the same thing as a body cell. Different words for the same exact thing. Germ cells are egg and sperm cells. Germ cells develop into gametes, which are the egg and sperm cells. So germ cells are the beginning cells, which then turn into egg and sperm cells. Sorry, that's my coffee cup. Gametes are called sex cells, and these are two kinds, egg and sperm cell. Oh, sorry, let me go back for a second. This always happens where I have to go back and do it all over again. There we go. One day I'll figure this out. So for humans, females only have egg cells, males only have sperm cells. Some animals are purely male and female, but other animals have both. It just depends on the kind of animal we're talking about, like earthworms, for example. Each earthworm has both egg and sperm cells in their body. But most animals will only have one, either eggs or sperm. So just to show you again, more detail, the difference between the two. Somatic cells, your body cells, that makes up everything in your body you can think of. Skin, liver, eyes, nervous system, brain, etc. Gametes are sex cells, and that's only egg and sperm. Don't write this down. You already wrote this down on the last slide, so you don't need to write this down again. It just gives you a better idea of their difference between the two things. Egg and sperm cells, their purpose is to pass on DNA to offspring. This shows you a microscopic image of an egg cell and a sperm cell. You can find gametes in two places, ovaries and testes. So for females, they have ovaries which contain the eggs. The Latin word for egg, well, eggs is ova. And so Ova would be another word for eggs you might see in your book. Ova are made in the ovaries. And then for males, sorry, I went too far again. Sperm are made in the testes. So for a female, when she's born, she has about 1 million eggs already made, and they'll be with her for life. Now, as she gets older, about every month, 1 egg has a chance to be fertilized, but the other eggs are just stored. Over time, the eggs do die off, they get older, but the eggs that she has are with her for life. They were made when she was a baby in the womb. But for a male, sperm are made all the time. And so sperm are constantly being produced for a male. But for a female, that's not the case. And so as she gets older, the eggs, the chromosomes, they are more prone to defects. And that's why a woman who's in her 40s having a child is more at risk for having birth defects than somebody who's younger, because the chromosomes are older in the egg cells and more prone to mutations, especially Down syndrome. That's a very common risk as you get older, because the chromosomes stick. And as they stick, you're more prone to having them have extras. And extra chromosomes can lead to Down syndrome. So also radiation, X-rays, things like that can also damage the DNA in the egg cells. The sperm cells too can also be prone to radiation damage, but it's not as common because the sperm cells don't stay for too long. They're constantly being produced and they die very quickly, and more of them are made. Gametes have DNA that are passed to the offspring. And so the purpose of eggs and sperm is to pass DNA to the new child. So the sperm really only contains DNA. They're very, very small. But for the egg, it contains DNA along with nutrients for the new organism and all the organelles. And so it has copies of every organelle along with nutrients. And that's why eggs are so big in size compared to the sperm. And that's why you can see very large cells that are egg cells, like chicken eggs or ostrich eggs are very big, because the mass of that egg is mostly food for the baby that's developing. So egg cells are usually the biggest cells in the body, and for other animals too, because it contains a lot of nutrients and organelles for the new organism. And sperm cells are usually the smallest cells because its only purpose is to send DNA to the egg cell. Within your chromosomes, there are 2 main kinds. You have autosomes and sex chromosomes. So sex chromosomes determine the gender. Autosomes contain genes not related to gender, but for everything else. So autosomes control things like your blood type, your hair color, how tall you'll be, athleticism, musical ability, genes for cancer. Really everything you could think of, all the genes are located on autosomes, except for things that make you male or female. Each cell in your body has 23 pairs of chromosomes. And a pair means 2, and so you have 23 times 2, you have 46 total chromosomes in each cell in the body. Half come from mom, half come from dad. So looking in this chart, this shows you your chromosomes. And the left-hand one comes from one parent, the right from the other parent. So let's just say that these all come from dad, the left-hand side, then all the right ones come from mom. And so with chromosome number 1, this one came from dad, this one came from mom, and so on, all down the list. Now, for the last one that's circled, XY, those are sex chromosomes. And so the X you always get from mom. The Y you would get from the dad if you're a boy. So XY gives you boy male characteristics. XX gives you female characteristics. And so the male sperm determines gender because males have X and Y chromosomes. So they can either give the child an X chromosome or a Y chromosome. And females, though, only have X chromosomes. So the mom always gives the baby an X chromosome, and the dad gives the baby an X or a Y. An X chromosome gives female characteristics, XY gives male characteristics to the baby. Chromosomes are numbered 1 through 22, and those are autosomes. The 23rd pair of chromosomes are sex chromosomes, and that's X and Y chromosomes. So as I mentioned, chromosomes X and Y determine gender. XY is male, XX is female. You can see that Y by far is the smallest of all the chromosomes. There's about 90 genes on the Y chromosome. And those are only for male characteristics. X chromosomes are about 2,000 genes in length. And the reason why they're a lot more is that they contain more than just female characteristics. They also have control over things like blood clotting factors. Also for things like immune system. So there are several things they control besides just female characteristics. So female XX, male XY. Sorry, I just lost. Let me go back for a second. I already went through that. There we go. Now, there can be sometimes mutations that happen with sex chromosomes where you could have XXY be one thing that happens, where you get 2 X chromosomes and then Y chromosome. What would you be in that case? Well, if you have a Y chromosome, you have male characteristics. And so anytime you have a Y chromosome, you are a male. So whether it's XXY, XYY, that's always a male. Now somebody, and usually it's very slight, so XXY, XYY, usually go through your whole life, even though you have this condition. It's just so, it's rare and also very mild, but it's possible people who have XYY chromosomes can be more prone to ADHD. They can have a hard time focusing. They can be more aggressive, more angry. They could have more acne, more muscular, be more muscular. So those are things that could happen. XXY, that could be more feminine, a little bit shorter, and things like that. But again, it's not guaranteed that is what would happen. And these are all very rare characteristics. So these are things that don't happen very often. There also can be just X and nothing else. So you could just have somebody who misses an X chromosome and just has 1 X chromosome. What would they be in that case? Well, without a Y chromosome, they're female. So Y determines male characteristics. Without the Y, you're a female. With the Y, you're a male. So those are all, you might, as you get older, especially, you might see arguments about gender and how, well, there's not just male and female, there's a 3rd gender or 4th, 5th gender. And they might bring in these studies and say, well, there's XXY, XYY. But the thing is that if it's anything with Y, they're all male. And you're not going to notice anything different about them. So it's something that is not, it's very black and white. There's no gray area where they don't know who they are. I mean, they look and feel like they're a male. They might have slight differences, but not noticeable differences. Going on to chromosome number. So we have 46 total chromosomes, but there are other things that can have a lot more or less chromosomes than us. So ferns have 1,200 chromosomes. A fruit fly has 8 chromosomes. It does not tell you how complex an organism is. Ferns are a lot less complex than we are, but they have a lot more chromosomes than we do. Chromosomes are just how DNA is packaged. That's all that means. And so it tells you nothing about the complexity of the organism. Sorry, let me go back. So this image shows you the chromosomes, and the different colors tell you where the different genes are located. There are many genes we don't really know about yet. And so most of the DNA we have not discovered yet. We have isolated about 30,000 genes, but we still have many thousands or even millions of genes to still discover. So our understanding of the genes in our chromosomes is very limited. Homologous pairs of chromosomes have the same structure. For each homologous pair, one chromosome comes from each parent. So going back to like the first chromosome, number 1, we can see that number 1 has 2 legs to it. Well, each came from a different parent. And so the left one, we could say came from the mom, right one came from the dad. We don't know just by looking at which one came from which, but one came from one parent. And that's true for every chromosome number. So number 9, one thing that controls is blood type. And so maybe for the dad, they had blood type B. So the gene on 9 would be blood type B on the right-hand side. But let's say the mom had blood type A. So right here it would be blood type A. This is blood type B. So it's both coding for blood type, but they might code for different kinds of blood types. That's what homologous means, where they code for the same kinds of genes, but might have different variations in how they express those genes. Or one might code for blonde hair, one might code for brown hair, one might code for blue eyes, one might code for brown eyes. So they each code for the same kind of body structure, but maybe different colors or variances within that based on coming from mom or dad. So homologous means similar, but not always the same. They contain the same kinds of genes, but might have different traits. So as I mentioned, number 9 codes for blood type, but the mom might have A, dad might have B. And so you'll have different variations in those blood types based on who you have it from. So if that's true, if you have A and B, which one do you have in your body? So we'll talk more about what that represents and what genes you would express, what genes you wouldn't express as we go on. But you can have blood type AB where they're both expressed. But you can also have a gene for brown hair and a gene for blonde hair and only express a gene for brown hair. And you can carry the blonde hair gene and give it to your children. And so 2 parents might have brown hair, but have blonde hair children because they carry the gene for blonde hair and gave it to their children, but they themselves did not express that blonde hair gene. So certain genes can be hidden and then passed on to children. And we'll talk more about which genes are hidden, which genes are expressed, and predicting the results in children. But that's later on in this chapter. Okay, so reproduction sexually would involve a male and a female where the egg and the sperm join to create a new organism. Fertilization has a Z in it. They wrote it as an S because British and Australians spell it with an S, but American spelling is with a Z. So fertilization is when you have an egg meet a sperm. Egg and sperm each have 23 chromosomes. They combine to make 46 chromosomes within the first cell of the new organism. So a fertilized egg is the first cell of the new organism. It's called a zygote. So a zygote is the first cell of that baby. Zygotes then start to divide. And as they grow, they turn into an embryo. Embryo is just a very small baby still in the womb. So the zygote has different DNA from the egg and the sperm and different DNA from the parents. And so it's its own organism. And so that's when life begins, is when the egg and the sperm meet, because you've created a new kind of cell that has different DNA than the parents have. And that's a new organism separate from the mom. Oh, sorry, let me go back for a second. Fertilization, and again, it's with the Z, the fusion of an egg and a sperm cell. So you might see in the book, it calls the egg an ovum. So ovum is singular. Ova is plural for eggs. Once one sperm cell hits the egg shuts off any additional sperm cells getting to the egg. Because if you had more than one sperm cell fertilize the egg, you would have more chromosomes than needed. And if you have more chromosomes, then life cannot continue. And so the egg has to only let in one sperm cell and shut off the rest, or you would not have life at that point. All right, body cells are diploid in their arrangement. Gametes are haploid. And what that means is that diploid cells have paired up chromosomes. Haploid cells have chromosomes in singles. Diploid cells have 2 copies of every chromosome. As you can see in this picture on the right-hand side, you can see that they both have 2 reds, 2 blues, 2 greens. Those are chromosomes.
So what is, you said there's only like one that goes in?
Yes.
What if you have like twins?
Oh, that's a good question. So twins can be from different things. So identical twins come from one egg. So identical twins, it was one egg that was fertilized and then split into 2 different people. And then fraternal twins is when 2 different eggs are fertilized. That's like having siblings at the same exact time. You know, like your brother and sister don't have the same chromosomes, but twins were just 2 different eggs fertilized at the same time if they're not the same identical twins. So those are 2 things that can happen. So twins that are in one sac, they're identical twins. Twins in different sacs usually are fraternal twins where they came from 2 different eggs. That's usually how that happens. Diploid cells, sometimes you might see in the book referred to as 2N, and it just means you have twice the number of chromosomes, that each chromosome is in pairs. So your body cells are diploid, which means that they each have pairs of chromosomes. Yes.
So for identical twins, do they have enough chromosomes?
Do they have what?
Like enough chromosomes?
They do, because identical twins, so they came from one egg cell, right? That egg cell just it's the same exact cell that split. And so the egg cell copied itself and then split into 2 identical cells. Through mitosis, it just split, and it now has 2 of the same exact cells that each then make 2 different people. So in your body cells, you have half from mom, half from dad. Each came from a different parent. Haploid cells have 1 copy of every chromosome. You might see in the book that it's just written as N. Gametes are haploid cells, so egg and sperm cells only have 1 copy each. Sorry, let me go back. Right here. Now, if you were to have, say, 3 copies of cells or 3 copies of chromosomes or more, the cell could not survive, or it'd be hard to. Down syndrome is when you have 3 copies of chromosome 21. And that's one of the only ones that you can have where you can survive. The other copies, if you have 3, it's usually not survivable.
So what does chromosome 21 program?
There's a lot of different things that it does, but some of the things it does is muscle tone, development of bone and muscle structure, immune system. So with Down syndrome, what can happen is that they're more prone, or sorry, they're less prone to most cancers, except for soft tissue cancers like leukemia and lymphoma. The body is able to attack cancers very well, and so that's one thing that 21 chromosome 21 codes for is the immune system. And so people who have Down syndrome are able to fight off infections, well, certain kinds of cancers better, but others they're more prone to. And they also have usually heart development, muscle development is usually weaker than normal. Also throat development. Those are some of the things, as far as like speech goes. They can have malformation in their voice box or in their throat that can cause breathing problems or problems with speech. Brain development can also be impaired. So those are some of the things that are affected by number 21. And if you lose a chromosome, that's even worse. So sometimes you can have just a single chromosome, and that's pretty much always deadly. The only time you can survive missing a chromosome is on the sex chromosomes. So you can lose one X chromosome, only have one X chromosome and survive that. But missing any other chromosome is usually, it's going to die pretty fast. Like the cell would die, not even having an embryo or a baby. Usually the baby doesn't even get that far in development. So it's usually, if you have too few or too many chromosomes, you get very bad results, and it usually is not survivable. Diploid number is 46. That's how many chromosomes you have in a body cell. That's how many total chromosomes you have in a body cell. Haploid number is 23. Haploid is always half the diploid number. So a haploid number is how many chromosomes you have in a haploid cell. Egg and sperm cells have 23 chromosomes. Body cells have 46 chromosomes. I'm not sure why I show that one to you again. Oh well. So I mentioned on the last slide the importance of having the right number of chromosomes. So if you have too few or too many, it's usually very harmful. You get severe effects. Most of the time, it leads to death of the embryo very quickly. But one of the most common ones is Down syndrome, where you have 3 copies of number 21, and that one is survivable, and you can live a long life, normal lifespan with that many times with treatment. But it can be severe. The severity of it depends on many different factors. Mitosis and meiosis are 2 kinds of division of cells. They make different kinds of cells. Mitosis, as we talked about earlier, its purpose is to make more of the same kind of cells. Mitosis makes more diploid cells. So mitosis starts with diploid cells, and it makes more diploid cells. It makes identical cells. It's used for growth and repair of your cells. So anytime you need to make more blood cells, skin cells, muscle cells, your body goes through mitosis to make more of those cells. So you can see in the top picture, this cell right here is diploid. It's duplicated chromosomes. So when they're X-shaped, they're duplicated. They split apart. Each green, each purple, each red goes into each cell right here. And now these cells right here are still diploid, but they're not duplicated anymore. So you would have, you see right here, the purple and the green are the same length. So those would actually pair up. And so would the red and the, is that a teal color, light blue color? Red and the blue would pair up too. So purple and the green, one came from mom, one came from dad. The red and the teal, one came from mom, one came from dad. And they split apart. Mitosis would result in duplicated cells, but the chromosomes have split. And they go from duplicated to unduplicated chromosomes. Meiosis is a different process, which we haven't talked about yet, but we'll get to in more detail in chapter 6. Meiosis takes a diploid cell and converts it into a haploid cell. Meiosis is used to make more egg and sperm cells. So the only purpose of meiosis is to make more egg and sperm cells. This would occur in sex cells, where that's where production of egg and sperm cells happen. So it produces gametes. It results in haploid cells. So I mentioned before that for females, they're born with about 1 million eggs. When they're a baby, they have 1 million eggs in their ovaries. And throughout their life, that is getting smaller and smaller as they get older. They don't make more eggs. But what happens is that the eggs are kind of frozen in meiosis. They're frozen in about halfway through meiosis. And when every month, one egg goes through the entire process and goes through every stage of meiosis, and it could be fertilized at that point. But the rest of the egg cells stay suspended in place halfway through meiosis. Sperm cells, though, are constantly being produced, and so they're constantly going through all meiosis stages. In meiosis, what you can see is that one diploid cell turns into 4 diploid cells. So we start with one diploid cell, you get 4, I'm going to say haploid cells. You get 4 haploid cells at the end. And so the beginning cell has 4 chromosomes, right? The ending cells each have how many chromosomes? 2, right? Each. So these now have 2, right? This had 4. These now have 2. And so the haploid number of the cells is 2. The original cell, the diploid number is 4. So the number of chromosomes is halved in meiosis. The genes are shuffled up like a deck of cards. So the genes are all rearranged. Every egg cell and sperm cell is unique. You have millions of different combinations of egg and sperm cells within one person. There are millions of combinations you can have of your genes. That's why every sibling is different, because there are many combinations you can have. In the parents' genes, there's many different ways they can vary in their expression. Okay, that is it for 6.1. For homework, let's see what page that's on. It's on page 161. Questions 1 through 6 on 161.
Miss Holly,
Yes, Lucy?
do you want me to log off while you guys do the questions?
Fine. If you have any questions, you can ask them now. If you don't, then you're free to go.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Holly.
Have a good day.
You too.